Hello students, in this video lecture I am going to discuss about the concept of arrays and strings. So basically what is an array? An array is a very useful data structure to store collection of similar data values. So whenever we want to organize related information together and want to give a common name to all of them, then arrays are the obvious choice. And once we have stored multiple elements together, then we need to specify to the compiler which one of them that we have to access. For example, I have stored say 5 numbers under one array. Then suddenly I want to access the third element or the third number in that array. Then how do we communicate this to the compiler? So there is a provision given in the C or C++ where we can use an index value to access a particular element in the array. And another very important point regarding the arrays is that arrays are invariably given contiguous memory locations. So whenever an array is declared, whichever type it is, whether it is an integer array or character array or even object array, always the memory allocation for an array is given in contiguous memory locations, and there is a very good reason for that. We will see it in the next slide, but remember that arrays are always assigned contiguous memory locations, which means that the lowest address will be pertaining to the first element or the element pointed by the 0th index, and the highest address in that sequence will be given to the last element in the array. And arrays and pointers are very closely related. I explained this particular point elaborately in my video lecture on pointers. So if you haven't seen it, just watch it. Here I will not be focusing much on this particular point. Okay, now I am going to stress on the point of contiguous memory allocation. Let us assume that an array is declared as int a of 5. So what is going to happen for after this declaration is that compiler is supposed to allocate 5 memory locations to store the values of this particular array. And let us assume that the first element is given the address of 113, and as a result the next element will definitely be given the memory of 114, and the next element will be given 115 and so on. That's what I mentioned as contiguous memory locations. So from the first memory, the subsequent memory addresses will be in exact sequence. Now what is the advantage of this? Why this needs to be followed very strictly? That is because whenever an array is created, the compiler only stores the first address in the memory inside the array name. Only the first address is stored. It does not store all the individual addresses of the array. That will lead to a lot of memory wastage. Say for example, an array is of 1000, size is 1000. In that case, if the compiler tries to store all the memory addresses, then it has to store all the 1000 addresses. But there the advantage will be that it doesn't need to be in any order. The memory locations can be scattered. Because you are going to store all of them, you can access any of them. But the actual implementation is such that only the first address is stored by the compiler, and because all the addresses are in exact sequence, it can calculate the subsequent addresses. For example, if it wants to know what is the address of the third element, it will simply add a 3 with the first address. So in that way it can calculate any address part of that particular array just with the help of the first address, and the first address is commonly known as the base address. So base address is very important for any array. It is with the help of the base address we can calculate, that is the compiler can calculate the remaining addresses. And this also leads to another point that whenever we mention the array, you can also access it in different ways. We have already seen that an array is inherently a pointer. So it's not like an array can be used like a pointer. An array is basically implemented as a pointer by the compiler. So this particular syntax is typically used for an array. We are very familiar with this syntax where a is the name of the array and 2 is the index of the value that we want to access. But it can also be mentioned in different ways, like asterisk within bracket a plus 2. This is actually a pointer usage. So we are now treating a as a pointer, and a plus 2 indicates that from the base address second location. Let's take this example. So here when you say a of 2, we are actually referring to this particular address. So in that case, what will happen to the second usage? Base address is 113, plus 2 refers to 115. So that is actually leading to 115 only. So both are equivalent. Because this is equivalent to that, this is also equivalent to that. Writing asterisk 2 plus a is also same, because you are still going to add the base address with the 2. And the third syntax, though it looks very awkward, it is still acceptable by the compiler, because ultimately they all mean the same to the compiler. There is a base address and there is an index number. Just add the 2 to calculate the resultant address or the destination address. So that is the idea. Now we are going to focus on types of arrays. The first one is the single dimension array. This is one of the very useful array. So whenever you want to store a number of values together, like student marks or student register numbers, employee IDs, so in those cases we can use the single dimensional array to represent them. And the syntax for declaring such an array is a data type followed by name of the array, and within the square bracket we have to specify the size of the array. We must specify the size because only then the compiler may calculate the memory for that particular array. We have already seen that the purpose of data type is for deciding the memory size. So integer means generally it will take 4 bytes, whereas float means it will take 8 bytes. So in that way the compiler is able to determine how many bytes has to be allocated to a particular variable with the help of the data type. But now we are also making it to an array. So that means that here the address memory size will be calculated using the formula given at the end, which is total bytes equal to size of the data type multiplied by the size of the array. For example, if you are using an integer array of size 5, then integer requires 4 bytes, and since the number of elements are 5, it will be 5 into 20. So 20 bytes will be totally allocated to this particular array. So next one is in the usage of index. We can access any element of the array with the help of the index. We have already seen the examples, and there is another example given here. So balance of 3 equal to 12.23. So in this case you can now visualize what is likely to happen in the background. So now compiler will go to this particular array called balance. In other words, it is going to access the first address of this particular array or the base address stored under the pointer called balance, and retrieve that address, add 3 with that, and find the resultant address and go to that particular address and put 12.23 in that address. That is what actually happens for this particular statement. And in C++, all the index always starts from 0. So as a result, the maximum index is 1 less than the size of the array. So if you declared an array of size 5, then the index range is going to be 0 to 4. The next very important point you have to be aware of is that both the C and C++ don't provide any bounds checking, but it is now available in all other languages like Java and C#. They all have strict bounds checking. So what do you mean by bounds checking is that I just mentioned an example of an array A of 5. So the maximum range is 0 to 4. But what if I try to access as A of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8? That is actually a violation. So we are trying to go out of the memory range of the array. But the compiler of C++ won't be verifying this, and they won't be throwing any error message when we access the memory address outside the range of the array. So it does not it's not going to be tackled by the compiler. It is left to the programmer to carefully write programs so that no boundary violation takes place. Now generating pointer to an array. We already have seen that an array itself is a pointer. So an array itself is a by default it's a pointer, and it is going to store the base address or the starting address of the array. But if needed, we can also assign an array to a pointer. Additionally, a pointer can be declared and an array can be assigned to that particular pointer. So this is a syntax for that. So int sample of 10 is an array, then we declare a pointer, and now we need to link the two. So for that, the simple syntax is p equal to sample, and just take a note that I have not mentioned any ampersand here. So because a sample it's also a pointer. So sample, if it is a normal variable, then it will be necessary to use ampersand. But whereas here it is an array. So array means that when you just write the sample, it's inherently a pointer. So you can simply assign the base address of sample into p. Once this is done, then you can access the elements of the array with the help of the pointer variable. So the next statement shows how we can do it. Asterisk within bracket p plus 2 actually means we are trying to access the second element from the base address. So from the starting address, the second element, that means 0 1 2, not 1 2. So 0 1 2, third element will be accessed in this way. The next aspect of arrays is that many times we will have to forward an array to a function, and we already know why we have to send arguments to functions. So what is the purpose of forwarding arguments? That is because a lot of our programs will make use of local variables. So a good program has to minimize the use of global variables, and it must have more of local variable usage. And whenever we use local variables, their visibility is going to be confined to the functions in which they are declared. So they are not going to be visible or accessible to non-functions, that is outside functions. So in that case, there is a sharing needed. So explicit sharing is needed. That is done with the help of the passing arguments. So we can pass any argument, any value can be passed. We can pass a variable, we can pass a pointer, we can pass a string, we can pass an array, we can also pass objects and structures. We will see all of that in the later classes. So now we are going to focus on how to forward an array to a function. And before that, let's recall that there are two mechanisms by which we can pass arguments. One is call by value and the other one is call by reference. This was also briefly discussed in the pointers video lecture, the difference between call by value and call by reference. So whenever you pass arguments through call by reference, the called function can modify the value of the calling function. So whatever variable or array that is passed by the called function, by the calling function to the called function, that can be modified, and the modification will be reflected in the calling function. That is the idea of a call by reference. Now when it comes to an array, by default it is going to invoke call by reference, whereas for a variable, normal variable, we have to explicitly convert call by value into call by reference. So when you simply send the value of a, let's say int a, if you just send it by as an argument, only the value of that will go to the called function, not the address, and as a result any change made in the called function will be restricted to or confined to the called function, and that will not come to the calling function. But when you send the argument as ampersand a, int ampersand a, in that case it becomes call by reference. But for an array, even if you simply pass the name of the array, it is still going to result in call by reference. Again, the reason is already known, because an array is itself is a pointer, so it does not need any explicit argument passing with ampersand. It's going to be anyway passed as a call by reference. This is the syntax when we want to pass an array as an argument. If a is the name of the array, then you just have to simply mention a as an argument. And when it comes to, this is called as the actual parameter, that is the array that is being passed from the calling function is referred as the actual parameter. And we have to have a appropriate receiving the argument at the receiving side, that is at the called function we must declare a parameter, and that parameter is called the formal parameter. In formal parameter we have three options when it comes to arrays. Number one, we can declare a pointer, integer pointer. If this is, since this is an integer pointer, we can declare a integer pointer explicitly like int asterisk x. After that the usage of the array is going to be very much like this particular example. So we have to manipulate the element of the array using this syntax. That is one option. The other option is we can declare it like this. So int some name of some array name and followed by empty square brackets. But point is that here also x is a pointer, but it is the difference between the first and second is that here it is more obvious that we are going to handle a array, so it's more readable. But here it may be a normal variable or an array, that is not clear from the declaration, but this declaration makes it very clear that we are actually expecting a array to be passed to this particular function. And the size is not specified because it's going to be taken care by the compiler. So it is based on how many elements we are passing, automatically that will be assumed. And moreover C don't have any bounds checking, so it doesn't matter whether you mention the size or not. And we still have one more option left, which is specifying a size, but I already have said that this is not going to be taken seriously because there is size is not considered by the compiler. So my choice of argument passing is, or formal parameter declaration is, this particular one. So we can mention the data type followed by a name for the array and empty square brackets, and after that we can handle this particular we can manipulate the array of the calling function very much like it is part of this particular function, and it's going to be a call by reference based implementation. So ultimately all the three declaration methods produce similar results. So it is only from the user point of view they look three different approaches, but from the compiler it all means the same, that we are passing the base address and we are receiving it into a pointer, that's all. So we are passing a base address from this line and that address is received into a pointer, something like this. So if this is the array starting from the address 113, then what is actually passed is only the base address. Again we are it's not going to pass all the addresses of the array, it is only going to forward the base address of the array, and just by incrementing the compiler will be able to move from one address to another address. That is again the advantage of consecutive memory allocation. And this is showing that array passing is always called by reference. So here what we do is that we just declare an array, and one more point you can learn from this is that sometimes we may also initialize the arrays. So instead of simply declaring an array, we can also initialize them like this. So int a square bracket empty square bracket equal to list of values to be assigned, and now the size of the array is actually 5 because 5 numbers are stored into the array. After that we are passing it to a function called function2, and which is received here under the name of x, and then we increment the value of x of 5 plus plus, and that is happening under the for loop. And eventually when you come back to the calling function and print the array again, you are going to see the modified value 2 3 4 5 6 will be printed instead of 1 2 3 4 5. That is because it's called by reference. But sometimes we want to disable call by reference, so it is going to be automatically call by reference every time. But if for some reason if you want to pass an array to a function and want to ensure that that function does not modify the array in any way, we can lock the modification, that is with the help of const keyword. So const, constant. So we can now freeze the array such that the called function can only read the values, but it cannot change the values. So in that case, this statement will become illegal. So this statement will not work. Compiler will immediately throw an error message. So we cannot modify a variable which is made constant. This is an option if you want to prevent the modification of the array. Now what about taking input for an array? I mean, whenever we talk about array, for loops become become very useful. So we will be mostly using the for loop for taking the input for an array. Similarly, for manipulation of the array also, we will be using for loop. So we are familiar with this usage of the for loop, but this is also to be known that we can only take input using a for loop and specifying the index. This is illegal. Cin of a. We can't simply assign value to an entire array just by mentioning the name of the array. Some students used to attempt this kind of a input statement. It never works. But there is a exemption for that. The exemption is that this works if it is a character array. You will see it in the subsequent slide how to take input for character array. So for character array, we can just take input by writing the name of the array alone, but it is not going to work for other data types. So let's be clear about it. So and one more point is that one array can't be assigned to another array like variables. So we have seen that we can assign as a variable simply as int a equal to b. Then the value of a will be simply copied into a. But such a thing does not happen to array. You can't simply write a equal to b or b equal to a, which is invalid. So you will see error message. If at all you want to copy the content of one array into another array, we have to go for the for loop usage only. So here we may use this for loop, and in that we can write a of I equal to b of I. That is the only way we can copy one array into another array. And now we are going to moving on to another type of array which is called as a strings. So under C, strings are nothing but a type of array called character array. So character arrays are actually treated as strings under C. But as we move to C++, we will see that there is a separate data type called strings. So we no longer need to use the character array as if it is a string under C++. It has its own string data type, which is more suitable for object oriented way of handling. We will learn that later, but for the moment we will stick to character array usage as a string. So point number 1, when the character array is used as a string, it is going to end with a null character. So whenever we declare a character array and store a string into that, automatically a null character will be assigned into that particular string as the last character. Now the question is, what is the need of it? Why a null character needs to be added into every string? That is because the compiler needs to know the length of the string. Let's say I have declared a string or a character array of size 25, and then I am trying to input a word from the user. And the user need not always type a string of 25 characters. He may type a small word with 5 characters, or he may type 7 characters, 8 characters. So the actual number of characters entered into a string may vary at runtime. It need not be always be equivalent to the actual size declared. So the compiler has to have some clue about how many characters are present in the string, and that is for that reason the null character is introduced. So the compiler will start scanning the string or the character array from the first character, and the moment it encounters a null character, it recognizes that there are no more characters in that particular array, and so it will come out of the character array. So null characters are not useful for us, but they are very useful for the compiler. As a result, because there is going to be an additional null character included into every character array, we have to declare the character array to be of one size larger than the actual requirement. So if I want to store a string of 10 characters, then I must actually declare that array to be of size 11, so that we have the space for adding a null character at the end. Now the string constant, just like integer constant means integer numbers, character constant means all the alphabets, and similarly floating point constant means all the floating point numbers. String constant means any string. So any string that is written within double quotes is actually called as a string constant. And unlike the other constants where the data types are exactly matching, for a string constant there is no data type matching. That you can store numbers as characters constant, we can store special characters as string constant, even alphabets or anything can be stored. The only qualification is that they have to be accommodated within 2 double quotes. So anything that is written within 2 double quotes is treated as a valid string by the compiler. So compiler is not going to inspect the individual characters and say whether they are valid or not. It only expects one double quotes at the beginning, another double quotes at the end, that's all. And whenever we assign a string constant to a character array, the null character will be automatically added by the compiler. Now how do we give input for a character array? So one approach is we can use the conventional for loop. I already told you that arrays are always used with the help of along with for loops. So we may continue the same usage here. We can write a for loop, and within that we can take the cin write the cin statement, and we can input all the characters. But it is not the ideal way to handle character array. It has a lot of issues. Number one, we will have to type each character one by one. So if you want to enter hello as a single word, then you have to type H, enter, E, enter, and so on. So we can't type all of them together. And another very important problem is that it's not going to add any null character into the array. So in this way, if you take input, they are going to be treated just as collection of characters, not as a single string. So compiler will not add any null character at the end if you use a for loop for taking the input. And as a result, this will become a problem when you try to print the string. I already told you that the purpose of null character is to determine for whether, I mean, when to stop the printing of the array, character array. And here it will fail because of the absence of null character. Compiler, after printing the actual characters, it will go on to print some junk characters from the character array when the size of the array is larger than the number of characters stored. So if you want to overcome this problem, then this has to be done. So after taking all the inputs into the array, we must manually put a null character at the end of the array. Like this we have to do. So this is actually the symbol of the null character, and that has to be inserted manually, and now it will work. But this is not a proper way. We have a better approach to overcome this problem, which is we can simply write the name of the character array. That's what I pointed out while discussing the integer array, that though we can't write cin of just integer array, it is perfectly fine when it comes to character array. We can write cin str, and compiler knows that here the user or the programmer is trying to take input for the entire string, not for individual characters, and it will end the string by a null character. So everything takes place properly, and this is how we have to handle the strings. And we can also print them using cout just in the same way. But here we still have a limitation, which is we can't enter any blank spaces in the middle of a string. For example, I want to enter hello world, where I want to type space in the middle of hello and world. But problem with the scene is that as soon as it encounters a null space character, it will assume that the input is over. So it will only take hello as input and it will ignore the second part of the string. So this is not going to be useful for us if the input requires a blank space. If not, then it is fine. Let's say I want to enter some names where the names won't have any blank spaces, so we can use this itself. But whenever we want to insert strings with the blank spaces, we have a different function called getLine. So C++ has got a library function called getLine, which is actually equivalent of getYes in C. Hope you remember that. The same problem is encountered in C also. The scanf function will stop taking the input for the string the moment the blank space is encountered. And there we used to overcome that problem with the help of getAs function. And here we have a similar function called getLine. So we can directly see the example here. Here I have declared a string or character array as str of size 25. Then I am going to take the input using cin.getLine. First argument is the name of the character array for which I want to give the input, and second argument is the maximum size that can be accepted. Remember, I don't need to type 25 characters. 25 only represents the maximum maximum values, number of characters. For example, if I enter hello world for this input, it will properly store hello world with the blank space in the middle. So remember this, whenever we have the need to store take inputs with the blank spaces, we must go for the getLine usage. Now string manipulation. So we have seen how to create a string, how to declare a string, how to input a string. Now how to manipulate a string. Once again we can do it with the help of a for loop, just like this example. So in this example, I just want to copy one string into another string. So str1 is a string which is assigned the string constant of hello, and there is another character array declared as str2. Now I want to copy the first string into second one. I can do it with the help of this for loop, but as usual we have to put a null character manually at the end of the second array, so it won't be happening automatically. And but once again we have a better approach for that, which is the usage of library functions. So the C library has got plenty of useful functions for string manipulation. For example, if you want to complete this particular task of copying one array into another, then we can actually use the function called strcpy, which will copy the second argument into the first argument. But remember that these functions are not any magic functions. They are actually implemented in this way only. Internally, if you look into the logic of the functions, they will be doing it at the character level, just like we have done it here. But only thing is that since they are already built-in functions, we don't have to repeat the logic. So we can just consume the function straight away without writing our own logic. So just learn the usage of various useful string handling functions. Now I am going to demonstrate a common program, a popular program on strings, which is writing a program to check whether a given string is palindrome or not. So first, what is a palindrome? A palindrome is a string that gives the same meaning when read from both sides. So whether we read from left to right or right to left, it is equivalent. Such strings are called as palindromes. So here I am taking an example to understand it. The given string is Malayalam and it is stored inside a character array and it ends with a null character. So we have to develop a logic for this. I mean, there are different ways you can solve the problem, and lot of the students try to follow this particular logic. They used to declare another array, copy this into that, reverse it, and then compare the two. But one thing you have to remember is that when you write a solution for a problem, just getting the correct answer is not the only objective. It is a basic requirement, but it is not the only requirement. You must also get the result in the most efficient way. So you must have a logic which reduces the memory consumption and reduces the time consumption. So when you declare an additional array and do the copying of this array into that, definitely it's going to consume more time and memory. Now I am going to just show you a simple logic. Just with the help of one array you can find out whether the given string is palindrome or not. So manually let us try to find out that logic. So what is actually needed? You have to compare the first character and the last character. After that, okay, if these two are mismatching, then you don't need to compare the remaining characters. Here itself you can break away. You can just end the verification or checking, reporting that the array or the string cannot be a palindrome. Let us assume the first and the last characters are equivalent. Then we have to check the next two characters. If they two match, then we have to check for the next character. So in this way we have to compare every character. So first character and last character, and the second character and the second character from the last. In that way we must keep moving towards, see, this will move from left to right and this will move from right to left. And when you will end this, the moment you reach the middle, that's all. That is the logic needed. So I have written a program just based on this logic. Just observe it. The string is declared here, then I take an input for that, and then I am going to use two indexes. As we have seen in the implementation, we need one index to move from 0 to the other side, another index to move from the last index towards the middle index. So that's for that purpose I and j are declared. I is initialized with 0 as the starting address, and but here we have to find out where the last index, because the number of characters are not known. So we use a function called strlen, which will tell us what is the last character. And because the index starts from 0, -1, we are subtracting -1 from this value. So parallelly we are going to handle two indexes, one index from left to right, another index from right to left. This will be incremented, that will be decremented. And when you will end this logic, as soon as I reaches the middle index, that is string length of the string divided by 2. So when this then when the I value reaches the middle, this program will end. And each iteration we will increment I, whereas we will decrement j. Inside the for loop we keep comparing str of I with the str of j. The moment they are not equal, immediately we can display that the string is not a palindrome, and we return 0. See, the purpose of this return statement is that once we have concluded that the string is not a palindrome, there is no need to continue the program. We can stop the program immediately. And I have already told you that return statement serves two purposes. One is when we actually want to return a value from the called function to the calling function, we can use return statement. Another is when we want to stop the execution of the current function. So return statement will also end the execution of the current function, and here I am using it for the second purpose. As soon as I have known the result, I will end the program with the return call. So that is happening. So this loop will run for n by 2 number of times. After that, if you still come to this line, what does it mean? It means that you never could execute return 0. So if this was executed, then you can never reach this line. So reaching this line itself means that it's a palindrome. So you don't need to do any kind of additional verification. If you can reach the cout statement, then it has not reached the if condition, and it could never execute the return statement. So you can just print it is palindrome, and then you can end the program. This is the logic for finding palindrome, whether a given string is a palindrome or not. You have a lot of similar problems available on string handling, but the basic idea is similar to that. You can use lot of built-in functions and apply your own logic to write those programs. Now we are going to look into the last part of this topic, which is the usage of two-dimensional arrays. Though one-dimensional arrays are used more often, we also have the usage of two-dimensional arrays. So two-dimensional arrays represent a kind of matrix or a table with rows and columns. So whenever we want to store values pertaining to a number of rows having a number of columns in each row, then we can go for the declaration of two-dimensional arrays. This is a syntax for how to declare a two-dimensional array. And for manipulating of two-dimensional arrays, we will be requiring two for loops. One for loop to function at the or to move at the row level, another for loop is to move at the column level, something like this. So I equal to 0 to I less than 10, I plus plus, it's going to represent the number of rows, whereas the inner for loop represents the number of columns. So in each iteration, we will take one row and traverse across all the columns in that row, then we go to the next row, and then we do we move in across the columns of that particular row. And we can use this particular two-dimensional arrays to represent something called arrays of strings. So what are arrays of strings? For example, there is a problem where you have to store a number of names together. We know how to store a name. One name can be stored with a single character array. But what if the requirement is you have to store a number of names together? Then the option is going for a two-dimensional character array. So it is a common requirement while we do programs that we have to represent array of strings. Examples are like when we want to store names, in this case it comprises of 30 names with each name having maximum of 80 characters. Now how do we take input for 30 names? This is the syntax for that. So we can write cin.getLine names of I. This names of I represents the rows, not columns. So for each row, that is for each name, we can enter a maximum of 80 characters. So we can enter 30 different names with the maximum 80 characters. They all will be stored under the two-dimensional array. And similarly, to display the names, we can use this kind of cout statement. So this is the basic idea of the arrays and the strings. So we have seen how we can declare an array, how we can input for an array, how we can manipulate array, and similarly the connection between arrays and pointers, how memory is consecutively allocated for arrays, and how we can handle strings with the help of character arrays. Thank you.